What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod. We're going to give you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. First, let me introduce you to my co-host, Dave Martinson. Over there on the other side, I am Pat Sheehan. Dave, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You snide fuck. How's it going?
I'm good. We got a packed show again today. We're going to be talking some Joe Bros. We're going to be talking quite a bit of TV, actually. We got Black Mirror, 3 episodes. We're going to be going through the whole season. Chernobyl, I caught up. I should say you were caught up in the moment with that, as well as, of course, Big Little Lies. Then we're going to be talking a couple movies to end it. Just to tease a little bit, one that I think we both thought was pretty good, and one that I think most people thought was pretty bad. But before we get into any of that, please hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, go to our SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, and find any way to listen to the show that you would prefer. And also, give us a 5-star rating review on iTunes. All the feedback helps. All right, Jonas Brothers, Happiness Begins. 10 years.
The comeback.
Lines, Vines, and Trying Times. Their last album. And now Happiness Begins. They had it's weird. So they released a documentary with this, which I didn't get a chance to watch, but apparently it kind of details a bit of, I don't know if like a falling out is necessarily the way to put it, but like Nick and Joe seem to kind of be like dicking over Kevin in a sense, over the last 10 years, and now they're back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that documentary's on Prime right now, and Jonas Brothers obviously like split, went on hiatus or whatever, when that happens to most boy bands at some point, but they're kind of a unique case because they weren't put together on a reality show or, matched up because they were all good at dancing or anything. They're literally family, right? So Kevin, like, he's the oldest one, and he went and got married way back then. And around that time, like, they split, and I think it came out since that it was Nick who was kind of like the biggest star of the trio, kind of wanted to split and branch off. And I know he had his own little group for a little bit, and then him and Joe just really had solo careers, and Kevin just kind of fell off. And I mean, as we get into it, it's just kind of wild that Jonas Brothers are back, more famous, more popular than ever before, which you don't usually say when it comes to boy band comebacks. Like Backstreet Boys came back this year. NSYNC had a big moment at Ariana's Coachella set, and apparently they were testing a reunion tour buzz, but Jonas Brothers coming back like they never left. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people tweeting about their upcoming concert or concert tours and things like that, and
arenas.
It's crazy. They sold out MSG pretty quickly, which is obviously the biggest one by me, but the amount of stands out there for the Jonas Brothers all this time later is impressive. And they dropped this album again, Happiness Begins, and it's interesting because we heard the singles, and I wasn't necessarily super excited for this album. Didn't really have high hopes in terms of this being like one of my favorite albums of the year, but I thought it could be a solid pop album. But the singles, Sucker, Cool, things like that, I was like, oh, this is incredibly pop. This sounds like a bit of a departure from who they used to be. And I feel like that's kind of what the album is. It's just like, it's this very generic sounding pop rock, kind of just like cool pop rock in a sense. And really left me just kind of thinking, okay, this is a band that just wants to remain in that sphere of being inoffensive, just kind of wants to play it safe in a sense. That's kind of what it felt like to me. How did you feel about this album?
Yeah, good points there. The sound didn't really throw me off, even though it is a departure from the group's previous sound, because Nick's solo career, which was solid for a few years, Jealous was a big hit for him. That was all pretty standard, middle of the road radio pop, sex jams, Purity Rings, Long Gone, right? And then Joe, funny, like, he was in that band DNCE, Cake by the Ocean, legitimate hit for him. And I was like, oh, wait, that's Joe Jonas? Like, I don't even know how many people realized that was him when they heard that song. And that was more like more of a carefree pop, a little. It doesn't sound like it was more from a pop band. Fine, but then hearing them come together on this, yeah, the soft pop rock that they used to have on some of their big hits, like SOS, like there's some like you hear like heavy drums on those early Jonas Brothers hits, right? You actually hear the guitars a lot. And now, I mean, you look at these credits, like Greg Kurson is on Happiness Begins. And that shouldn't shock you if you listen to any of the early stuff, even the stuff he's not really involved. It just kind of sounds like it's informed of what works today. And while I do think they try and explore some of their, past decades of experiences on some of the slower songs, especially towards the end of the track list, there are a lot of songs that are just clearly attempts to become the next hit, become the next radio hit. But, it's tough to blame them for that because, as we said, they're more popular than ever. But Sucker, the first single, which I was not a big fan of, I think it's fine, but really not for me. That was the number one song in the country, top of the Billboard chart. They had never done that before. They had a lot of legitimate hits back then, but they never actually went number one. And then their first comeback single immediately went number one. So it's definitely more in line with mainstream pop today than anything they had ever done before. So I guess that can be disappointing if you wanted them to be more artistic. I do think there are a lot of bops on here, though, so I guess it really depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, what are those bops that stood out to you?
I think the clear highlight for me on the album is Only Human, which is towards the beginning. I just really like that beat, and I think the lyrics, they just kind of bounce on that song. It sounds really fun. Ultimately, I think a lot of these like attempts at radio hit play, attempts at hits, your temperature might vary on some of these middle album cuts, the songs that aren't trying to be more lyrical, just because I honestly have a hard time telling the difference between Nick and Joe on this album. Neither one is an amazing vocalist. They're both fine. They're both good enough. But ultimately, that was what took me out of it at points, was that their vocals aren't strong enough to make up for songs that just compositionally are just okay, or just whatever. But honestly, I was satisfied, especially because I was really low on Sucker and Cool. But then listening to the whole thing, I'm like, all right, there's a little more here than I expected. And it'll placate the fans as we know. So it's a very interesting situation.
I think if anyone bought their ticket to see the Jonas Brothers live this summer, when they first came out, they're not going to be disappointed by this album. I think enough of these songs are good enough to be enjoyable, especially live. I'm sure they'll add a little bit more of a bite to them. I found actually the beginning of the album to be sounding a little bit too samey in terms of just like the rhythm of the songs. They all seem to be kind of almost formulaic in a sense. I enjoyed, I think, the second half of the album a little bit more. Songs like Trust and even the closing song Comeback, I thought was actually a pretty good ballad and a nice closer. I think there's enough here where people will be able to enjoy this, but I don't think this is going to be a very memorable album in terms of end of year lists or moving forward. Something people are going to come back to. The Jonas Brothers, their earlier work is really what I think will define them until they make that next great Jonas Brothers album. Who knows when that will be. Any last thoughts before we move on to Tyga?
I really am just genuinely impressed with how they've rocketed up their fame on this comeback. Maybe part of that is the significant others of Nick and Joe, Sophie T and Priyanka, but I don't know. I actually enjoy them as celebrities, so I'm happy they're back.
Yeah, they made that video of them on the boat listening to Golden Hour, which I stand for that video.
That's the Game of Thrones bit too. Like they're funny. They're self-aware guys, so good for them.
Yeah, they're fun. So why don't we move on to Rack City here for a second? Tyga, the legendary
T-Raw
album. Man, first album since what, 2016? Kyoto? Is that
but
right?
I guess it depends who you ask, because no one gave a fuck about that shit, man. Kyoto, Bitch on the Shit too. Even the Gold album, everything since 2013 that Tyga did was largely ignored because it was bad.
Yeah.
And Tyga as a celebrity was waning at the time. So yeah, I can't say I listened to Kyoto, but read all the reviews and everyone said don't bother, and I didn't. So, but I've been intrigued. I've talked about this on the pod before. I've been intrigued with the prospect of a legitimate Tyga comeback, and that started last summer, about a year ago now, when he dropped Taste with Offset, and it's got the video, and that song is just a ratchet banger. The video applies, as you can imagine, and it just gives you shades of 2011 peak Tyga, when he was, truly the third pillar of Young Money with Drake and Nicki under Lil Wayne, and, Make It Nasty, Faded, and Rack City, as you said, were just, top tier elite strip club anthems. And Tyga truly felt like someone who could dominate that space, like a Juicy J, And while he didn't get more famous as a celebrity due to his relationship with Kylie Jenner, which has its own issues, we don't have to adjudicate that. Musically, he really just kind of fell off after Hotel California. But it was always, I don't know. I guess I just have a lot of nostalgia for that time in my life when I was bumping all the strip club shit when I was 18. But I missed it, and I know a lot of other people that did too. So it was just the prospect of the Tyga genuine, legitimately good comeback was just really intriguing, and I feel like we kind of got some of that on this. What did you think? Because I know you're not as big a Tyga fan as I am.
Yeah, I enjoy his hits. You mentioned Taste. I think that's a good song. By the way, Taste over 630 million streams on Spotify at this point. That's wild. Insane. Rack City, brings me back to like senior year of college. A lot of nostalgia for that song. The Nowstalgia for Legendary, not as much. I found this to be a pretty, I don't know. It's weird because I listened to this and T Grizzley back to back, right? And we're gonna talk about T Grizzley in a second, but his voice is so like clear and commanding, and he comes through so hard. And then I listened to Tyga, and he just sounds like soft. He just sounds like he's coming in like this, and like almost ASMR after listening to T Grizzley in a sense.
He sounds like a guy who would get his girlfriend stolen by another rapper, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So I think for me, I just found this to be there were moments I liked. There's some decent features on here. But overall, especially when he had to carry the song himself, I was just kind of like, this is a bit of a snooze fest for me.
Yeah, and I agree. Like Tyga peak Tyga, he never, and this is sense of the mixtapes too. I know there's a lot of mixtape heads out there for Tyga, the Well Done series and all that, and he had a lot of fun freestyles and stuff on that. Can't deny that, but he's never had like a great project. He never had the consistency to deliver a true project. He's really been a singles artist, a hits artist, right? And I think just what stood out to me about Legendary is not that it's a good album, because I can't say that, but there's enough of just Tyga doing basic, passable, contemporary trap music that I'm like, all right, good. I'm just happy Tyga's back to like the bare minimum that we need him to be for people to pay attention. And I guess that's like qualifying it really, really hard. Yeah. Like if we're talking about this for any other artist, like that wouldn't fly. But for Tyga, I'm just like happy he's like approached back to like his general peers, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's passable. It wasn't like the worst listen I've had this year, but there were. I mean, some of his lyrics, dude, are also just like cringeworthy. On Stash, it's not the hallway, it's the whoreway. I like almost threw my phone across the room. I was like, is this something this guy dude actually just rapped? Like,
this gives you ear cancer.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't take it. It also seemed like, you mentioned those trap beats, and there are some on here, but it also seems like he was trying to almost bring a more pop type sound, like that present kind of like I don't know, like island influence.
Sure. Yep. That makes sense.
And I was kind of like, all right, like I get you're trying to like you said, bring yourself back into the moment, but like it just felt like it wasn't necessarily something that was true to his identity, but just something more like, this is what people like now, so this will be listenable.
Right. I think the song that stood out to me was Goddamn, which he actually kind of previously put out, but now it has an A-Boogie feature. I like that. I think like the bridge into the chorus on that reminds me a lot of old school Tyga, so I really thought that was a fun song. But the problem ultimately is with this album is that nothing is as good as Taste, and Taste is already a year old.
Yeah.
So I guess the shelf life of this comeback is maybe questionable. We'll see how any of these other songs perform. Back to Stash, as you said, man, everyone knows I love Blueface, but he really did not help he gave his haters a lot of help here by totally ignoring the beat on that feature. My God.
Yeah. I also thought Lil Wayne on Me sounded bored and also more high pitched than I feel like I've ever heard him. I don't know if that was produced
Lil
by
Wayne bored. Sounds like this decade.
Any features other than those two that are even worth mentioning to you?
Him and Chris Brown. Say what you will about Chris Brown, I'm certainly not a fan, but him and Chris Brown have always kind of had a good chemistry, both the mixtapes and then the fan of a fan album, and I think that definitely will probably resonate with some fans. But it's like I said, it's borderline passable enough to at least make me click on the next song.
Yeah,
which was not where he was just a year or 2 years ago. So I guess it's a success.
Tyga's on the rise. All right, well, why don't we talk about that T Grizzly album, Scriptures?
Grizzly Gang, dog.
Grizzly Gang. His fourth album, at least from what I could tell.
Some of those are tapes, but yeah, he's been pretty prolific in the past 2 years.
And I mean, it's kind of crazy because I remember talking about him as a potential XXL freshman. I think when we were first starting out as a podcast, but 2 years ago.
I think we first day out had come out and we were like 2017. Is it too early? He doesn't make it, and then I think we both were certain he would make it last year, and it really feels like he just turned it down because I can't see how they didn't offer it to him. But yeah, it feels like he's since been passed over. But this is his fifth project since 2017, so he's doesn't seem to be wasting any time.
And how did you feel about Scriptures as a project in a whole?
Yeah, so I wasn't. We weren't really planning to give this much airtime, but just because I think T Grizzly isn't. We didn't cover Still My Moment, his second project from last year, and the reason for that is T Grizzly, he's a solid artist. He reps the D. He's a gruff, real guy, and I feel like he brings that out in terms of like those true street lyrics, and he can really tell you his story, which he's got a lot to tell for a young man, but it's always kind of sounded a bit samey. I think that was a bit of our criticism with Activated, his debut album, and it just I wasn't expecting him to truly like branch out. I was expecting this Scriptures project to be more of the same, so thus we probably wouldn't have anything new to add. I'm like, we're still fans of T Grizzly. There's probably some stuff you'll like on here, but shockingly, I feel like T Grizzly actually switches it up a lot more than I expected on here. There's definitely some influence from Lil Durk, his Illinois compatriot, who he collabed with on the Bluetooth tape, as well as obviously Juice WRLD. Songs like Locksmith, where T Grizzly starts singing, and he literally acknowledges it. And it's like, T Grizzly, why are you singing? He's like, suck my dick or whatever, right? And it's like, oh, so T Grizzly, he is interested in perhaps switching up his sound, at least making himself a little more viable to a larger audience. It's just an interesting premise. I did not expect that from him, given he's a street dude. But it kind of surprised me, and I actually like Locksmith, for the type of song it's trying to be. And what did you think? Did you pick up on those, lane shifts a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think I'm tuned into T Grizzly enough to be probably aware of those sort of changes. I will say I hardly ever listen to him. But what I mentioned on our Tyga review that just he comes through so clear. And he comes through with such authority on his songs. I think that's what I really enjoy is like, even if I don't like the beat, which I actually really liked a lot of the beats on this, but he just brings such an energy to it that it's hard to knock it. I mean, I think something we critique a lot, or at least I critique a lot of rappers for, is not having a ton of different topics that they like to rap about, and I think he kind of does fall into that category. But I don't knock him for that because it doesn't seem I don't hold him to the esteem of I think some others just because he's not as established, and it seems like he's still coming up, like you said. A couple songs did stand out to me on this. Scriptures I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought like the beginning couple songs weren't great, but the ending track with A Boogie I actually really liked a lot. And I thought this was a good weekend for A Boogie because it
Yeah, for
seems
sure.
like the two tapes we just talked about, he's really stood out to me. And we for someone that we reviewed like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and we
Yep.
were like,
Year and a half.
the project's pretty good and I really liked it. He seems to be skyrocketing into a more and more famous artist every time we listen to him.
Yeah, given Hoodie Season came out end of December, which was a bad time for us. We skipped it, but I mean, the album was massive, and he truly is a huge star and a important feature for someone to get. Honestly, T Grizzly having a song with A Boogie and YNW Melly, I was like, that's quite the combo. Definitely two guys that don't sound like Grizzly at all, but they mesh pretty
Right.
well. Yeah,
I also really liked Had to. I thought that was, or yeah, Had to. Add Me Up, I
yeah,
wasn't as big of a fan of, but Had to, I thought was great.
yeah. I think overall, it's just interesting to hear the changes, as I said. But you're right. He still is kind of limited in his scope, but at least it's, I mean, like you can have a long ass career just speaking to the streets, and if he's gonna
Sure.
try and do that from the Little Dirk angle as well as the Chief Keef angle, I think there's a lot of potential to keep going. It's weird. He's never really been a true like chart mover, a true unit pusher in his short career, but I'm still holding a hope that he could really have a big hit. But even if he doesn't, I mean, like he was featured on Shit Real, that J Rock bonus track from last year, and that was just a hard ass feature. I feel like, as you mentioned, his voice, his persona, even in small doses, just can really come across as something at least a little unique, even if the lyrics can be hit or miss. So yeah, still in on T Grizzly.
Someone I don't know if I'm in on or not, and I actually wasn't very aware of, was Casey Veggies.
Mm,
I was, I think, somewhat aware he was involved with Odd Future to an extent, but
that's right.
I don't think I've heard anything about him other than that he's been attached to Odd Future in the past. And now that Odd Future isn't really working together anymore in that sense, I don't know if we can say that
Mm.
they dissolved, but they're currently dormant in terms of what they're putting out together. What what has he been doing? I mean, it seems like he had a project earlier this year we didn't talk about.
I think it was just some of these early songs, but Casey Veggies is a very interesting guy to me, just because he is someone who got a really nice start right away. I want to say he was like maybe 18. He's a contemporary of Tyler, and as you said, Odd Future connection. He's featured on Odd Toddlers off Bastard, Tyler's debut tape. He was actually a early Odd Future member who left the group and became kind of an affiliate, still their friend, like the way Vince Staples operated on
Hmm.
OF. And around that time, as you can imagine, with the way those circles were moving in the beginning of the decade, he became friends with Mac Miller, and he was an opening act on the Blue Slide Park tour, and that's actually how I became aware of Casey Veggies. Is I saw him live. I also saw him a second time open up for Big Sean, and I believe he got uh, affiliated with Rock Nation and Jay-Z. People are like, all right, Casey Veggies, LA artist. He broke off from Odd Future right away to be a solo artist, be his own guy, riding around town, kind of an early internet hit for him. What's going to happen? And it just never really went anywhere. It was very interesting, and like he would just kind of be dormant for times, and he dropped some projects like the Rocky Fresh collab project and Fresh Veggies, and like there's good stuff on there, but he never really grew that audience beyond like the internet, like in the know people that knew about him. And I always just find it very interesting because it just definitely felt like he missed his moment, missed his chance, and he definitely seems to reflect on this new album, Organic. But yeah, I mean, he never really had a hit to speak of, so that's kind of why most people weren't aware of him, and probably why you hadn't heard of him in several years.
So, what do you think of this this new Casey Veggies album?
Yeah, what stood out to me right away was the strength of the features. Getting a
Hmm.
game feature, getting YG, getting E40, really affiliating yourself with California for sure. But given I assume his status with his label is not good, given that his career hasn't really grown that much. I wonder if he had to pay for those himself. I'm kind of curious about that.
Mm.
But that stood out to me just because like that shows like he's really trying to grow. And I think these songs, they sound a lot like Casey songs. Like I don't know if I heard a hit on here, but at the same time, it did feel like he was kind of adapting to the way West Coast music sounds right now, West Coast rap. And I think that is a good development, given that he was also kind of just doing his own thing the past few years, and thus not really adopting any trends. And it still sounds like a Casey project, so it's not like he sold out or anything. But yeah, I thought it was just okay, which I think is, again, the problem is he needs something to really pop for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's young. He's like 20, 24 or something, but despite being around a long time, but it's, I don't know. It's, it just feels like this is not going to help him pop. And I feel like he's needed that for a while. I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, I think your thoughts characterize a lot of what I felt. There wasn't anything that I felt was super memorable other than the song Mirage, which I thought the beat on that was really cool. And it actually reminded me a bit of like a Earl Sweatshirt type sound in a sense.
Early colleague, it makes sense.
I felt like the YG feature on I Came Up was really solid, but then E40 comes in, and all respect to E40, he sounds like he's on just a different track, or like he recorded this and then they like try to put him over it because he just does not fit into that song at all. I did like Stop Playing with Dom Kennedy. I thought that was one of the better earlier songs on the album, but I don't know. I just didn't find much to be too memorable, and for an artist that, I obviously wasn't aware before, nothing here is really gonna make me come back and or dig deeper into his catalog at this point.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I thought he had a hit back in 2014, Backflip with YG and I Am Sue. I like that track a lot. I think that song's really fun, and that song, I feel like that came out now. If that song came out maybe under a different name, that would have been a hit. I think he actually performed it on, I want to say, 106 in Park or some one of those revival shows. He performed it live, like on TV. And it's like The Rock definitely pushed it and tried to make that song hit. It just didn't work. And yeah, for a guy who's been around a long time and still grinding, again, he acknowledges that a lot. I think maybe if he keeps going, like Casey Veggies doesn't sound like he's failing or anything, it'll be okay. But I don't know. Because I was a fan for a very long time, and the customized Grizzley tapes. Like, there's a lot of tracks in there I really like, and he just feels like he never moved past that early success. So it's just, I don't know. It just kind of feels, I don't know, a little disappointing, a little sad when I hear, nothing I see kind of push it forward. So I don't know. Definitely give him a shot if you never heard him before. I think he does have a bit of a unique voice for a West Coast guy.
He just my last thought on him is that he's still really young. He's like, I think 25, so he's got some time to hopefully figure this out and right the ship. I think there's potential, and if nothing else, he has a good eye for his album covers because awesome album cover, looks really great.
Hell yeah.
Moving on to Big Little Lies, Dave. Question for you: why are the most beautiful things also the most dangerous?
Who are you trying to kill?
Thoughts from a 12-year-old on Big Little Lies. Pretty heady stuff there. So the return of one of the biggest hits of 2017.
Yeah.
2 years later, we got Celeste and I'm gonna forget all their names now.
Renata.
Celeste, Renata. Yeah, Renata is probably my favorite one. Abigail.
Bonnie.
Yeah,
I forget the names too. I know the actors.
Yeah, exactly. We got Reese, Zoe Kravitz, Laura Dern, Nicole Kidman, Shailene Woodley. Just an all-star. Yeah, Meryl Streep added to this cast. What were your general thoughts of Big Little Lies season 1?
Yeah, I think I liked it more than you. I had it in my top 10 of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, the show was billed as a limited series because it was based off the Leanne Moriarty book and just kind of followed that very, very closely and followed the length of the books. It's like there's no book left. This is it. And, it swept, I think, 8 Emmys, the huge Emmy hit for HBO, huge ratings hit for HBO. I think it occupied like that True Detective time we had this year, that early year, really the first buzzy show. It's a good window if you have good material, and it definitely had a cinematic feel to it. Given that it's, as the peak TV ways go, you just have a bunch of movie stars in this show playing off each other, chewing scenery. It's just a lot of fun, and that's why I really liked it. I hadn't read the book, didn't really know what was going on, but I thought most of the characters were given a lot to do, with the exception of Bonnie. And it does seem like they're making a concerted effort to give Zoe Kravitz more to work with in season 2, which is great. But yeah, I like season 1 a lot, and I was not against season 2 happening. We've been talking about this a lot with shows like Barry and Killing Eve. Like, does a second season need to exist when the first one was so high? And I feel like it's almost more egregious now because it was literally billed as limited series and took advantage of that in the awards run. Like, if this went up in a drama, would it have got Emmys over Handmaid's Tale? That was Handmaid's Tale season 1. Who's to say? But yeah, I'm happy it's back just because I like watching all these stars play off each other. Now we have Meryl Streep in the mix. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Season 1 for me, I think it was kind of like learning to like vegetables in a sense, and that's not maybe the best comparison, but I'll pull it back, I swear. So like, when you're a kid, at least most kids usually don't like certain types of vegetables, but as over time, like, you're kind of forced to eat them, so you really learn to love them. I think for me, it was like we were spending time with these ultra rich, super douchey, just like horrible people, and I was like, man, I can't really get behind this. And then just the more and more I like accepted the campiness and like how awful these people were just to each other and what they were doing, and like found the humor in it, I think that's when I really started to enjoy season 1. And that's why I was actually excited for the show to come back. Like you, I didn't really have an issue with them having a second season. I think if we just get to see Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern just like be super ridiculous and outlandish in terms of their behavior and these amazing ultra rich settings, just doing the most catty stuff possible, I think that's enjoyable. And then you add Meryl Streep into it, who we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but she seems like she's really bringing a different element into the show. It's going to drive the plot a lot and give her a lot of moments to just be ultra ridiculous. For her, we already had one of those moments in the first episode. I think it's just there's a lot of fun stuff there to enjoy from scene to scene. So, yeah, why don't we talk about the premiere? What stood out to you? What were maybe the new things for this season that you're looking forward to?
Right. Yeah. It's, in a sense, the season 2 premiere is a lot like the beginning of season 1, and Reese literally says that. It's like, we have to go get our mom points cards again or whatever, right? Reestablish themselves. And God, as you were saying, like, I think the show could put off people just because you're talking about super, super wealthy, waspy people who have all these social issues, yet they still live on the fucking Pacific Coast Highway, right? Like, they literally drive across the Bigsby Bridge, like, during the normal days. Like, it's tough to feel bad for people like that, right?
Yeah.
But as you said, just lean into it and you have a good time. And I think this premiere does a lot to reestablish what we liked about season 1, while also, I think, pretty tactfully setting up what's to come. Like, Meryl Streep doesn't come out guns ablazes in the obvious sense, in terms of just pointing fingers and accusing people or really doing anything like that, right? It's very slow played, very meticulous, and she still has standout moments, of course, when she totally dresses down Reese, and of course when she has
for being short,
right, and thus being untrustworthy, like wild stereotype. Of course, the scream moment, which is becoming a meme, and season 1 was a meme factory in its own right? But I really like how they're playing that, because once you knew that she was playing Skarsgård's mom, obviously she's an antagonist, we know that, but I like
Mm-hmm.
how they're going with that, and also again setting up Bonnie as the one who is the only one apparently feeling any grief or remorse, considering she was the one who actually did the deed and killed Skarsgård, pushing him down the stairs. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and given the concerns that even Zoe had mentioned in a certain sense that she was given less to do and kind of felt like the fifth wheel in a certain sense, truly bringing her in, I think, is smart. And Renata, Laura Dern, is just kind of part of the crew, at least for now, where she was almost like a tertiary antagonist for parts of season one. So
Right.
I like where it is from a plot perspective. And of course, I already like all these performers. So yeah, I'm just very excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I think the plot is set up to be even more fun than the first season. I do think eventually it's going to become Renata versus Madeline again. You know, Laura Dern versus Reese, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, just in this one episode, Madeline was fighting with Mary Louise, the principal of the school, with Abigail, with her ex husband. Like, she was just like, she was out for war, out for blood with pretty much everybody. I think it's going to be a really interesting season. See how they juggle all these, the time that everybody gets in a sense. Because if you think about it, like you mentioned Zoe Kravitz kind of being that fifth or sixth wheel in a sense, but the show kind of needed that because of how much they were trying to explain about all these different characters and how to pull it together at the end. Now, if you're going to pull her more into the mix and give her more time, plus Meryl Streep, that's 7 people that seven different characters trying to give a decent amount of time to. And it also seems like they're trying to give James Tupper a little bit more time, trying to like figure out how to support Bonnie as, Nate, Madeline's ex-husband, who had an incredibly strange interaction with Adam Scott's
snide fuck.
Yeah, but like also just like what a bizarre request. Like,
very weird.
I can't emotionally support my wife, so can you, the husband of my ex-wife, support my current wife for me? That's such a bizarre request.
It also looks like they're setting up Renata's husband to be more involved, and even if that's a plot line that ultimately gets completed, it's still just adding the layers, I think, is just fun, and Skarsgård, from what we know, is a series regular for this season, so feels like his presence in the flashbacks and nightmares that Kidman is having seems like that's going to continue, and it's not just going to be glossed over. It's not just straight up replaced by his mom. He's still definitely a presence on the show, which is definitely interesting. We'll see how that translates. It's also, interesting, at least for me, like Catherine Newton, who plays Reese's daughter, her star has risen a lot, so it's kind of cool just seeing her just come off the bench once in a while, because she's also quite talented. And also Charlene's kid, who I don't think we even saw in the premiere, Ziggy, is played by Ian Armitage, who became an overnight star because he's fucking young Sheldon. Like he just plays Charlene's kid in this show, Like, I think it's kind of wild how much talent there is.
Yeah, I think we only see him for like 1 second when he's like dancing to a song, which I can't remember which song it is, but I think overall the Big Little Lies, especially with coming back after 2 years, is set up to be probably one of the most fun shows of the summer. And if you have the time and for some reason you're behind on it, you didn't watch it over the last 2 years, I would say catch up just so you can follow along, because there's going to be so many memes and gifs and just things on the internet about this. It's worth it just for that, because the conversation with this show doesn't just stop after it airs, which is, I think, one of the amazing parts about a show in the current monoculture, or lack of monoculture.
For sure. Also, I got to shout out that quick montage of sorts of Charlene dancing on the beach to the Sufjan Stevens song "Mystery of Love" from Call Me by Your Name. I was like, way to bring this song back in my life. Hell yeah. Loved it.
Great song. Also, we love that movie. Go check out that review. Chernobyl, another HBO miniseries. Although I don't think this one's getting a sequel, dog. So this is a 5-episode
3 Mile Island.
This is a 5-episode miniseries aired on HBO. Wrapped up about 2 weeks ago. I just got around to finishing it this past weekend. And there was a lot of buzz around the show, and I think rightfully so. This is, I think, what miniseries can be at their best in terms of planning out and structuring the story you want to tell and how you want to tell it. And I think also getting performances out of actors that feel real but also entertaining. Because I think the first episode specifically, I was like a little unsure until like the ending. Because I was like, this is, I mean, once the explosion happens and then it's a lot of people in like boardrooms like talking about things, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a bit of a grind. But then the way that the show is paced, the way that they put these, or they talk about these people in these incredibly terrible and like nightmare situations and how they're dealing with things. I was just really, really impressed. And the show, basically after a couple months of that first episode, really never lost my attention, which I think is kind of cool for a story that most people are at least aware of. But really uncovered so much more for me. How did you feel about Chernobyl?
Oh, I completely agree. I think it's truly just one of those miniseries that earns the cinematic label that we
Mm.
maybe often overuse when we talk about well-produced television. And I mean, the cinematography really stands out in a unique way. Like the production really captures the initial disaster of it all, and then of course the fallout, which is like perhaps the more interesting stuff to get into. But I don't know. I think it really made you feel like you were in Pripyat, Ukraine,
Mhm.
and like that's I think Chernobyl as a phenomenon. You know, it's been when we hit the Chernobyl Diaries horror movie from a few years ago that wasn't very good, and I remember I had always read and been interested in like Chernobyl tourism and how that actually works and stuff.
Mhm.
And of course, I played all gillied up in Call of Duty 4. You know, I had been there with
Yeah.
the sniper rifle, right? So like I feel like Chernobyl's not it's not like a secret or a story that was unknown to people, similar to I guess the Central Park 5 Netflix
Mhm.
show that
Yep.
just came out, When They See Us from Ava.
Yep.
Um, but seeing the story told and dramatized in such a professional way is ultimately really rewarding because I mean, the applications to what went wrong and how that you can play that off today in terms of like the failures of leadership and stuff. It's it can be a tough hang at times, but I also feel like it's kind of rewarding, and it's tough to say that about most miniseries, especially historical ones.
Yeah. Um, there were a lot of really good performances in this. I feel like Jared Harris really blew me away. Him and Stellan Skarsgård together, I felt like carried most of the show. Um, and obviously they were the two main characters at the center of the aftermath and how they were dealing with this crisis. Um, but I really felt like not only their relationship throughout the show, like kind of how their, I guess you could even say like friendship. I'm not sure if they would describe it that way, but the way that the show portrays is that they develop this friendship as the series goes on, and this trust between them, and then how they deal with, especially the end, like how they tell the world about what happened. I thought was just really well done. Both of them gave great performances. Also, Emily Watson, who played Ulana,
Yep.
a made up fictional character, which they address at the very end of the show. Um, I thought she gave a really strong performance. It's easy to really like her character because she's by far the most moral one and the one who seems like the most competent. And she's characterizing, dozens of scientists who were helping out at this. I do feel like they could have uh, picture or gave that picture a little bit more because it made it seem like they really put this in the hands of like three people in a sense. And I was
Sure.
like, whew, this is a lot. And I feel like they could have even made like Ulana into like maybe two or three characters to really try to portray this that aspect a little better. And they obviously, especially the last episode, I think they changed up some of the events of that to make it a little bit more dramatized. But overall, it seems like this was a fairly faithful telling of the events as
Yeah.
far as we know, and I give them a lot of credit for that because
Y-
it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's a few composite characters, which is just bad necessity. Of course, you got to do that sometimes. No problem there.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, no, I mean, having Gorbachev actually be in the show and really, I really think they do a great job, even from the first episode, of capturing kind of the fallacy of the Soviet Union's uh, mantra. And I think
Mhm.
Donald Sumter's character, who plays like that, I don't even know what his role was. He was just at that board meeting in the beginning on the side, the guy with the cane, is
Oh
just
yeah.
a high guy in the party, and he just spews the Kool-Aid, right, in such a confident way, and everyone gets up and cheers. And I think it just really captures how something that's a regime that was supposed to be pro people was really just anti the public, right? In terms of
Yeah.
how he was just advocating for straight up just lying to the public and cutting off the phone lines so they don't even say anything to anyone else. Like
Mhm.
capturing that, and then again the failure of leadership as we get further along. It's just it's tough to watch because as you're watching it, you're seeing how these people are fucking everything up, and then we're also seeing the other side of the coin, right? We're seeing everyone who's affected by it, and the animals and the people, and how they have to evacuate,
Yeah.
all that shit. It's just it really carries attention in a smart way, which again, it's hard to do for a historical event that people widely understand. Uh, Also, shout out Barry Keoghan having a
I
role.
beat you to it.
Love him, and of course, David McKelton, the guy who plays Roose Bolton on Thrones,
Mhm.
who's the prosecutor.
Yep.
I obviously love those guys. But yeah, love
Yeah.
Chernobyl, man. Really came out of nowhere. We were not sure if we would even cover it, but it really caught on and became a bit of a cult hit,
Sensation.
which is
Yeah.
impressive given that it was running, or maybe it was because it was counter Thrones programming in the beginning that it
Hmm.
succeeded in such a way. But yet another hit for HBO, and frankly one of their most unexpected yet.
Absolutely. Uh, Definitely recommend Chernobyl. Black Mirror. We've reviewed Black Mirror quite a few times on here. We talked about Bandersnatch just earlier this year. We talked about every season that's come out as it's come out. Now this is what, season
Mhm.
6 of Black Mirror. Um,
5
season 5.
with two
Um,
specials, White Christmas and Bandersnatch.
yeah. What White Christmas? I know it was a special, but I think about it just as part of season 4 or season 2 at this point. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Um,
Same.
Anyways, this is a quite an interesting Black Mirror season to me. I think because Black Mirror had been almost expanding as they moved to Netflix and were kind of just dropping all the episodes at once. We had seen the seasons grow for the most part. I think the last one, season 4, actually dropped 6 episodes, including San
And 3.
Junipero.
They're both
Yeah,
6-episode seasons.
which and one of those was a television or a TV movie basically, and won the Emmy for best TV movie, San Junipero. So we were really getting more and more Black Mirror. Then we get Bandersnatch, which panned by most people. I think we talked about a lot of the issues. Go check out that review to hear more about that. Was supposed to be part of the season. Then the showrunners decided that it didn't really make sense to put it together because there was just so much there, depending on like what courses you take, what decisions you make within the show. So
Like five
we
and a half
got actually.
hours of content, Bandersnatch. It's a lot, so it makes sense.
So after Bandersnatch, which is mostly panned, with only 3 episodes, and I say only 3, I mean any Black Mirror we get is usually higher quality TV than most of the things that come out. It felt like these episodes had to be pretty much no brainers, and I mean you got some big stars in this. You got Anthony Mackie, Miley Cyrus, Andrew Scott in these episodes. So it's feeling like they must feel pretty confident in the 3 that they're dropping. Dave, do you feel like these 3 episodes kind of lived up to the quality that Black Mirror has been known for?
Uh, yeah, I think over vaguely, yes. I mean, I know it was because of Bandersnatch, because series 5 was only 3 episodes, like the first 2 series. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're just gonna focus on the concepts and not overdo anything. I think the overall criticism of seasons 3 and 4, the first 2 since the show was acquired by Netflix, was that some ideas, some concepts just feel a little half baked or undercooked in the sense that the concept might be sound, but it just might not be enough to truly make an episode. Episodes like Men Against Fire, for example, stand out like that. And overall, I can't say I've ever disliked an episode of Black Mirror. It just inherently as an anthology, some episodes just work better than others. Some episodes completely work, right? Like San Junipero or Be Right Back, Entire History of You. So episodes of that just are completely knockout, right? And there's other episodes that are, mostly good and have plenty of fans in their own right, like the next few tiers down, right? And I think this series, series 5, ultimately feels like it's kind of in the middle tier where I think you can appreciate all 3 of these episodes for what they're doing, but none of them stand out as true knockouts. And I don't think any of these will even have the virality of, say, a Hang the DJ did last season.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I feel like ultimately, like, it's hard to have every one of these be a knockout. You have to write a completely new story every time in a completely new world. There's really nothing compounding on each other in this show, despite what the Easter eggs might make you think. So, yeah, I mean, I was satisfied. Again, I'm just a fan of the show, and Black Mirror's at its best when it's describing and exploring how technology and humanity interact, not about the technology itself. So I actually kind of like that these 3 episodes largely tone down the wild tech. There's nothing super futuristic about any of these episodes. I mean, we got AI, we got VR, and we got
I don't know.
social
I
media.
think VR where your whole body experiences the sensations of the game is pretty futuristic.
Sure, but it's just an extension of things we already understand, right? It's kind of like Metalhead. It's like, oh, Boston Dynamics has those wild robots. They'll kill us one day. Okay, let's do an episode where they kill us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. Ultimately, every technological conceit in this series feels grounded in something we already understand.
I agree for the most part. I do think there's one episode that is head and shoulders above the other 2 here, and for me, that's the second episode with Andrew Scott.
Smithereen.
I didn't write. Yeah, Smithereen. I thought that one was by far the strongest. One, I think having Hot Priest, Andrew Scott, coming off Fleabag season 2. Yeah, great timing. He's just on a heater right now. I'm buying a lot of Andrew Scott stock just because it seems like whatever he's given as a role, he just knocks out of the park. And I think he really delivers on the emotional heft of this character who's ridden with guilt by checking his phone, leading to a car accident and killing his fiance, and feeling like he never could tell anybody about it until he gets to this point in his life, where he makes this horrible decision. Also get Topher Grace in that episode, which, I mean, he comes in about 3/4 of the way through as Billy Bauer,
Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, basically. But I think he knocks it out of the park in that role. Like, it's pretty funny when you see him there meditating, and there's like, there's a situation we gotta tell you about. He's just like, fuck. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, I think that's also my favorite episode as well. I just don't think it need to be 70 minutes long. I think a lot of the stuff once we're in the car in the standoff spun wheels in a certain sense because we were still getting up to the twist or revelation that it was Andrew Scott who actually killed his wife, right? And he's doing this because of guilt, not because of any true demands or anything. I think it just could have been a little tighter, is all. But I like that it's funny because I think it almost sets up a red herring early in the episode where you feel like Andrew Scott's animosity towards Smithereen, this Facebook, Twitter conglomerate, is that people are always addicted to this networking, right? And you see him kind of revile at the woman he just slept with when she's trying to log into like the Facebook for her dead kid, right? And then he's always mad about people being on their phones, and just clearly looks against it, and it sets it up. Oh, look, this guy is just anti glued to the phone behavior. We can totally sympathize, relate with that today. Makes sense, but no, it's actually totally flipped around. So I think that episode was really smart because it's nothing that wild. Like that episode could have happened today. Nothing really futuristic about it, to be honest. A lot of easy stuff to comprehend there. I like the Miley Cyrus episode just because I really liked Miley. I thought she actually was quite compelling in her two roles as a kind of meta role as a overexposed pop singer, and then also as the AI version of herself.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was any like maybe lesson or even real conceit with that episode, but it was just kind of fun. I don't know. And actually, I think the first one kind of wore on me the most. Striking Vipers, aka Street Fighter, just because I feel like I kind of saw where it was going, and there was really no further build up after the initial revelation that they were having sex in the VR. Like once we got that, it was just kind of more of that, and we got the ending, which isn't quite a happy ending like San Junipero, but is not really sad either. I don't know. Just kind of feel like that crested early, and it was solid. But that's all.
Yeah, my issue with Striking Vipers, and I do want to talk a little bit more about Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too, is I felt like Striking Vipers, similar to what you said about episode 2 being 70 minutes, we probably could have cut Striking Vipers down about 10 minutes as well. I got enough scenes of them going into the game and making out, and leading to hot sex between these two fighters.
Shout out Mantis.
Yeah. to kind of get the point and kind of see, and I felt like it didn't really add much other than seeing what's his name, Yahya Mateen II's character, Abdul Mateen, fall more in love with Anthony Mackie's character. That episode almost in a sense felt a bit like a Black Mirror like parody episode in a way. Like if someone was gonna like make a Black Mirror episode that was just trying to be like a parody, I feel like they would try to do something like that. I feel like Black Mirror in the end kind of turned around and actually asked some interesting questions about like gender fluidity, sexual fluidity in terms of sexual attraction and things like that. But overall, that was actually by far my least favorite of the season. Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too, I thought was interesting because it felt kind of like two very different episodes put into one. I felt like the first half was about this teenager who is, goes to this new school, and like the point is like how this like fake robot friend kind of leads to actually further isolation and like detachment from reality, and causes problems in that way. And then the second half seemed more like it was about the issues with fame and how you reclaim who you are in like this current like technological climate, when so much of what makes someone famous can be replicated technologically. I don't know. I felt like that episode didn't necessarily tie together or as well as I would hope. And while Miley I thought was pretty good and pretty funny when she was like little Ashley 2 thing, when Ashley 2 like rolls herself around the cord to like pull out Miley's like life support, I was like, oh my god, I just can't. This is just too ridiculous, too stupid at this point. But overall, I think it was still pretty good. So Black Mirror is still quality. Just I think these 3 episodes didn't really live up to my hopes or expectations for the show.
So San Junipero and USS Callister both won multiple Emmys from the past 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. Do you think we will get there with Smithereens, which we assume would be the one they would push? They do an outstanding television movie, and they can get away with it because it's an anthology show, so you can still run it in those limited categories. So the competition is never that strong, generally speaking.
Yeah,
but do you think we can get there again?
I think that's the only reason we could get there. Although I would definitely, expect something that like a movie that is put out by. I mean, like wouldn't one of the Game of Thrones episodes technically fall into that category, or because it's not anthology, they can't do that?
Yeah, no. I mean, Thrones is just a drama. That just runs in drama. Right.
See that like that's where the criteria becomes interesting. So I guess because these episodes aren't connected, they can say, "Oh, this is a TV movie,"
Oh,
but the length is the same. Like, I mean,
I
what
just
we had
realized what it'll be going
three.
up against, though. It'll go up
Was
against
that?
the Deadwood movie with
Oh,
HBO's
yeah,
might
no.
behind it. So that and anything else HBO has as well. So yeah, maybe not.
We'll get a nomination still, but yeah, Deadwood
Probably.
movies got the unlock. Um, any last thoughts on Black Mirror before we move on?
Yeah,
The next season should be coming out around the political
right.
climate, so I expect more.
You know, I always find it interesting. A lot of people don't actually understand that Black Mirror was not a Netflix creation. It was a Channel 4 show that is really the brainchild of Charlie Brooker. And after the first two series and White Christmas, Netflix just bought the show and now owns the show. But the popularity in the States is due to Netflix, people watching those first 6 or 7 episodes. But it wasn't actually Netflix's doing. They were just smart enough to have the show. So, it's just funny that they can put on the Netflix watermark on their shows and people are really none the wiser unless they look it up. It's one of their most popular, talked about shows every time it comes out, but it's really just a show that they actually just acquired as opposed to greenlit from the start. Just interesting.
Dark Phoenix.
They
23% Rotten Tomatoes. Right now, it's projected to lose between 100 and 200 million dollars, US dollars.
probably on the low end of that, but bad.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I didn't go see it. I'm gonna let you kind of give your review. I'm not. I wouldn't say a huge X-Men fan, but I've really enjoyed the movies I have seen. Days of Futures Past, First Class. Even Apocalypse, which we talked about, and there were a lot of issues with that. I still think there were moments that I enjoyed with that. And most of the X-Men characters I really love. I mean, we obviously like Deadpool, Logan. We've talked about those movies and how much we've enjoyed those. So to see this be the last iteration of this X-Men series, the 7th and final installment here, feels a bit, I don't know, disheartening, sad, because it seems like not many people liked it. Do you fall into that category?
Yeah, well, it got a B- cinema score, which is atrocious for superhero movies, big IP, as we know. Yeah, it's been largely rejected because it's not any good. And it's weird because most people are referring to it as the last of this X-Men movie, certainly the last of the mainline series, but the New Mutants spinoff, Disney, when they refreshed their calendar, put it on for April of next year. Anya Taylor-Joy, Maisie Williams, Charlie Heaton, etc. That movie's been through so much negative buzz and press. People have all kind of been theorizing that maybe they'll just throw it out on Disney Plus and not even release it. But as of right now, there is a produced, finished film in the series that we might see in 10 months.
Didn't they recently have to do reshoots on that too?
So the thing about
like
that,
months later.
the thing about that is they never actually did those reshoots.
Oh my god!
And we heard about those reshoots like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So the whole thing's a mess. I mean, I think Maisie got asked about it during the Thrones press run, and she had like basically nothing to update about, and was kind of pissed that something she worked on was in such limbo. But either way, it's the end of the mainline X-Men films, and certainly the end of the reboot run that we had gotten. And yeah, it's just really disappointing because X-Men, a series that has had many ups and downs and has often been confusing, inconsequentially usually, but has led people astray for sure. It's really that first blockbuster franchise of the century. I mean, obviously, the first one came out in 2000, so obviously, but it was the first really big blockbuster franchise that in the superhero space before the MCU. And despite the fact that original trilogy ended on a low note with The Last Stand, was able to bounce back in a great way in 2011 with Matthew Vaughn's First Class, and then Days of Future Past followed that up, right? And it was always something that like the potential of it was so tantalizing because the X-Men as a brand, as a comic series is just so strong. Frankly,
love it.
X-Men used to be the most popular aspect of Marvel. It wasn't the Avengers.
Mhm.
And that just speaks to Marvel Studios and Disney, how they were able to make the Avengers now the dominant part of Marvel when it used to be X-Men, Spider-Man.
So impressed.
Anyway, yeah, it's just ultimately like you can just pick apart the choices they've made, and a lot of that is where we know the success of Marvel and the success and failures of DC recently. We have so much to work off now that we can kind of throw stuff at X-Men, like, oh, why didn't you do it this way, right? But I always kind of liked that they were a little different and they felt different. Um, but ultimately, the end results were just so inconsistent. And it just really is a bummer that Dark Phoenix is truly a low point. Like, I honestly think this is my least favorite of the whole franchise, which says a lot because The Last Stand and Origins Wolverine are not good movies.
So, well, uh, Origins Wolverine one is like infamous for like the Deadpool with the mouth stitched up and all
Making
those scenes.
Weapon 11 and Deadpool the same guy. Ryan Reynolds has ripped it to shreds in Deadpool scenes.
Yeah. So what made Dark Phoenix so bad?
Yeah, they had reshot a lot of it, I think 3 months worth. But when we get news of that, like that's kind of par for the course for any of these big things. A lot of times you just kind of run out of time when you have a shoot this large with a all-star cast this big. You just kind of need to go back later. But the more you hear about it, the more you're like, oh wait, this is going to be worse, which is awfully disappointing because Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Nicholas Hoult, and Jennifer Lawrence, who all started in First Class, they only had 3-picture deals. So they were done after Apocalypse. And Apocalypse was a huge letdown after Days of Future Past, right? But they all re-upped for one
For
final go
this.
for Dark Phoenix once Fox was able to hire Simon Kinberg, who kind of helped finish Apocalypse because Bryan Singer is unreliable, as we now know plenty about. Yet Simon Kinberg, who this was his directorial debut, it just seems like they didn't have this from a story perspective. They didn't have this from a vision perspective because there's just so many issues. And I think part of that is like The Last Stand, the Dark Phoenix story is not something you can just kind of do in one movie. It's this,
No.
I think it's a 10 episode main run, but it's ultimately established over many other comics. And I think Chris Claremont's run on that is one of the most famous stories X-Men has. And
Mhm.
to just kind of take parts of it and combine other things, it's just not smart when you have all these other X-Men storylines and characters that you're trying to service.
Mhm.
And on one hand, we have this new cast of sorts with Sophie Turner's Jean Grey, who has a lot to do in Dark Phoenix, as well as Ty Sheridan's Cyclops and Cody Smith-McPhee's Nightcrawler and Alexander Shipp's Storm. They only were just introduced in Apocalypse. This is only their second and now last movie as this new cast. And they were not given that much to do last movie. So you have them not really growing that much. We have McAvoy and Fassbender, Holt, and Lawrence. And Lawrence definitely peaked in Days of Future Past. And Fassbender was really just relegated to goon status in Apocalypse. Like, they never
Mhm.
were able to juggle the team aspect of X-Men, which is so important. Like, X-Men is not a series that should be told as solo movies, with the exception of, things like Logan. Uh, it just seemed they just combined all these concepts together, and meanwhile, the villain played by Jessica Chastain is critically underexplained, and ultimately the performance is just so neutral, which was clearly by choice, but just there's nothing compelling about the villainy. They're very one note, very obvious, nothing we hadn't seen before. So they don't really add anything, and it's funny because the movie is ultimately much smaller scale than past X-Men movies, certainly past Apocalypse. Apparently that was a studio note going into this. They're like, oh, let's get more intimate and less explosiony. That'll do better. But you still have to have a good script. And I think part of that is not having Dark Phoenix start and end in one film. So quite the bummer, man. Whether you're a casual fan or hardcore fan, it's just kind of baffling that it turned out this poor.
Yeah. Uh, Chastain, I think, is a really interesting aspect of this film. Uh, the character that she portrays is like I don't know. basically taking a bunch of characters from the comic books and kind of smash them together
Yeah.
to like manipulate Jean. And I think when you get someone like Jessica Chastain to one, it seems like underwrite her role, and but then to like make that person flat and just kind of take away everything that Jessica Chastain has, which is like charisma and like incredible acting chops, and just kind of boil her down to like this like from what you're describing, very bland character. It's really disappointing. And it goes back to what you were saying, I guess to put that point home, how they've had a difficulty juggling all these different characters at once, because like you talked about, if they had done like a 2 or 3 movie run up of the story, like telling it over time, you could have had multiple people in those roles and really added to the confusion and the turmoil that Jean Grey is in. And instead, they seems like they really butchered that beyond belief, and that's just, I think, kind of sums up everything that's been wrong with this X-Men franchise last 2 movies.
Yeah, and First Class really nails it as a reboot or refresh after the huge disappointment that was Last Stand, as well as Origins Wolverine, right? And then Days of Future Past which is my favorite X-Men movie after Logan, is just really dynamite for a lot of reasons, but also really juggles and puts a bow on the past trilogy. When we get to see Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, and Halle Berry comes back, and Shawn Ashmore comes back, and Ellen Page comes back, right? And having Days of Future Past, another famous X-Men story, actually be told in a really awesome way, despite the changes. And then you put the bow on that, and we had that last scene where we see, Anna Paquin's Rogue, and we see James Marsden's Cyclops and Famke Janssen, and we see all them in the school again, and you're like, wow, yeah, the continuity doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's okay, because like it just feels like they put the bow on it. Fine, great. And then again, we get Patrick Stewart one last time in Logan, but it felt like a great way to tie off that trilogy, which wasn't honestly even needed, but it was really cool to see. Then you're like, all right, we're going to keep it going because we like McAvoy and Fassbender and Holt and Lawrence, cool. But then you try and do the Age of Apocalypse in one movie. And not only that, you do it in such an uninspired way that you don't give Oscar Isaac any opportunity to succeed. And Olivia Munn plays Psylocke, kind of a cult character in X-Men, and does nothing. And you reintroduce Angel in a poor way, and Storm comes back as on a ship, and she has no lines really to speak of. And it just, if Apocalypse maybe wasn't Apocalypse, and maybe we established this new team, as I said, it could have been cool. And they cast Lana Condor as Jubilee in Apocalypse, yet they cut all of her scenes to the point where she has no lines in the movie. And then we see To All the Buzz We Love Before, we're like, oh, Lana Condor, really personable actress. Would have been great to see her actually be in X-Men and say anything, So it just like Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, that they just were telling different stories or just were made better. This Fox series might be continuing to a point where we'd be like, oh, well, maybe it's a shame that Marvel is taking over because we still kind of like this Fox run, but they fucked it up with Apocalypse and didn't help themselves this time around. So it just kind of fizzled out in quite a quick way. So don't know what else to say. It's disappointing.
What do you think Disney does with the X-Men from here?
Well, as we've said, check out our Marvel Phase 4 video on youtube.com/Nowstalgia pod, but we know X-Men isn't coming around anytime soon, right? Like, we know it's going to be a while, and that's honestly good. They have some time to stew on how to go about this, right? But as I said before, I think you can't just try and have like a Cyclops movie like the way you had an Iron Man movie, right? I really feel like X-Men is best as a team. So you're going to have to hit this casting hard and reestablish this and cast a lot of these people right away, because I feel like we just need to start off in Xavier's school. That's when X-Men is at its most compelling, when it's a group of misfits. And the continuity, the timelines, the multiverse of it all, Foggy will figure it out. That's fine. But I feel like the X-Men DNA of it needs to be the traditional sense, because I just have a really hard time seeing them doing one character at a time and then building it back up and make it feeling as a true team. Like X-Men is a real team all the time, whereas Avengers is a team that comes together from solo people,
Sometimes,
right?
right.
So I think you just got to start with the school. So you're gonna
Yeah.
need an Xavier and
Uh,
other people. Maybe you don't do Gene right away. Maybe you don't do Logan right away. I don't know, but you're gonna need X and you're gonna need the school.
yeah. I think this could actually be X-Men as a IP could be one of the first ones we see where they do like a TV show that leads into the movies,
Hmm.
using Disney Plus, because I think the
Yeah.
Xavier School for the Gifted is like made to be a television show. And then
It's
how
been a
they build from
cartoon
there,
many times.
yeah, which characters hit from there would be perfect to like build the
Sure.
series back up. So, why don't we jump into our last topic of the day, the Souvenir. Joanna Hogg, pretty established director over in the UK, but this seems to be one of the first films that's getting a lot of international attention. Um, Souvenir starring Honor Swinton Byrne, the daughter of Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton is also in this as her mother. So it's all in the family here. Also starring Tom Burton. Pretty interesting film. Yeah, about the relationship between Julia and Anthony. Julia, this mid-20s film student over in the UK, and Anthony, this like foreign ministry worker for the UK, and
Yep.
about their relationship, but also Anthony's battle with addiction and how that impacts Julia. The story is told completely from Julia's perspective, and I think what I find most interesting about this is it's also based on a lot of Joanna Hogg's own experiences.
Mm.
The Ringer had a really nice piece on this. Actually, I'd recommend you go read it. How did you feel about this film, The Souvenir?
Yeah, it's one of those movies that you have no idea about it until the Sundance buzz happens. Then A24
Mhm.
purchases it. They're gonna release it, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. I'll check this out. Like, it's a movie you just can't know about until they show it at a festival and people start raving about
Yeah.
it, right? So it's always
Mhm.
that's always something I look forward to every year. It's just these movies you have no don't know what to expect. And I went into the Souvenir quite blind. I didn't watch the trailer. I just knew everyone loved it, and I knew Tilda Swinton was in it. That's really about it. And uh, you watch the movie, and I think a critique I have in a certain sense is that it's not always super engaging, but
Mm.
it always keeps you in this world. I think it's funny because the way they shoot this movie, you see it a lot in the apartment, which is primarily the main setting. We're set in 1980s London primarily,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of camera shots where you see two rooms for Anthony and Julie, and they're one's in the kitchen, one's in like the bathroom or something, or one's sitting, one's standing. And the way they show that with like the wall in the middle almost kind of reminded me of Esmail's like top down shots of buildings at times
Mm.
where you show multiple settings in one frame. I just really like that, and the way they Hogg would do like quick pans, and I don't actually know if she did her own cinematography, but anyway, uh, that really stood out to me in terms of it had its own visual flair, which stands out for a movie that ultimately is just people in rooms or
Yeah.
outside. I mean, we're not watching any action here; it's just a lot of dialogue and walking and talking.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I think the strength of the movie is the dialogue in the sense that this movie does not show its cards and tells you what it's about or even what's going to happen right away. And
Mhm.
again, I hadn't watched the trailer, so I really had no idea where we were going. Uh, and that's actually really, really exciting just because I think it's a smart technique that you don't see that often.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of confidence to have an addiction movie be so subdued. Um, or we're watching this a few months after seeing, half a year after seeing Beautiful Boy, a very melodramatic, showy movie about addiction, movie we both still liked, but very different storytelling. And Souvenir, like I said, I think there's moments where I don't want to call it indulgent, but I just sometimes the conversations they were having, I just didn't find that interesting.
Mhm.
So maybe it takes you out at times, but it's still very compelling, the relationship these two have and how, like, I guess Julie is addicted to her
To
boyfriend,
him.
who's literally addicted. I'm not sure if that's actually the message or not, but it's definitely a movie you can't help but admire just for the choices it makes, even if it's not something that I love start to finish all the time. What about you?
Yeah. I went in I went in blind like you. I think to go to back to what you were saying about the cinematography, that probably felt like the strongest piece to me. Um, you know, talking about addiction and just kind of what people know about addiction, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of hiding, there's a lot of lying within it, and in a lot of ways, it's hidden. I mean, even like you said, they slow play what this movie's about. You don't even figure out until like I think like 30 or 40 minutes in that Anthony is really dealing with this. There's like clues that there might be something there, but
Track marks.
really, yeah. But then his friends like, yeah, I don't really get like he, heroin addict and you like what's the catch there? And like that's when you're like, oh, well now they put all their cards on the table. Now you kind of see what this is about. But even after that, it's not like she confronts him about it. It's like still a slow build. And the way that Hogg uses reflections in this stood out to me a lot because she has a lot of shots where you don't actually see the characters, but you'll see like a window reflection, and that will be how you see like Julia and her mother interacting, or you'll see like Anthony and her like in a room together, but you also see the reflection. It's kind of like distorted and muffled, and I felt like that really added an aspect of kind of probably what it feels like to be in a relationship with somebody who is suffering from addiction. There's a lot of things that happen that are hidden for shame reasons, or are hidden for the fact that maybe you want to support this person and don't know the best way how, so you don't talk about it, you don't address it. And I think to kind of use that as a cinematography trick or style, it was really smart. I agree. I found this to be a slog at times, and while their relationship was engaging, I just kind of found myself being kind of bored. And I think if there was one thing I would have liked, I think I would have liked to have, I don't know, maybe even just like more music in this or something like that, something that kept me a little bit more engaged. There was a lot of silence in this movie.
When the music was there, it was good too.
Yeah, it was great. There's that scene where I think she's like writing and that like the radio's playing, and like I found, and they were shooting it like from the desk, the perspective of the desk looking up at her. And I was like, that's a really cool shot, like a memorable moment from this movie. So I think that might have added something to it. Overall, though, I think just Joanna Hogg as a filmmaker and a stylist in terms of film is what I'm kind of left with, even if I didn't find the story super engaging.
Yeah, and it's funny because like alongside the addiction drama, we have Julie's film school venture, and we have her conversations with her teachers, and we have her conversations with her friends in the flat, right? And a lot of these conversations are very top level whimsical things and thematically driving the movie. And I don't know if the union of her film at the end totally worked with me in terms of how it relates to her relationship, their boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. It's a movie that is really all dialogue, so you really have to catch everything as it comes at you. And like Tilda Swinton's role as the mom is very small role, but very, I think, pointed in terms of what she's trying to do in terms of being a kind but judgmental figure in her daughter's life. And yeah, again, it's a movie that it's very artsy and not for everyone. Again, we have our own issues with it just from an entertainment perspective, but ultimately, I think it's still a movie I'm gonna look back on finally. I do have it in my top 10 right now, and funny enough, it's getting a fucking sequel, which is shooting right now. It's about Julie's extended adulthood, which I think is cool because her character, I think, is very well written, and there's a lot of potential in terms of where we take her next. Now that her, spoilers, Anthony's dead. So what's happening, right? But the news that Robert Pattinson, the GOAT, has been cast in this sequel, and they're already making it. So maybe we see this movie next year. It's awfully exciting.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne for sure. The more we talk it out, it seems like the theme that probably stood out most to me is just like the story and growth of this young woman. She starts off in the beginning talking about she wants to make this movie about this young man whose relationship with his mother kind of like as the mother dies, like something happens and he has to become more independent. And I think in a way, like the parallels between her, story and with Anthony and where she ends up, she's a lot more confident at the end of this film. She seems to find herself, even in like the scenes in the film school, you can tell she seems to be kind of coming into her own. And I think that, like you said, that's the exciting part for a sequel, is seeing how that character continues to grow and what that character continues to do. And also, I think her and Swin, obviously being mother and daughter, had a lot of chemistry in this, and I would like to see that relationship fleshed out a little bit more moving forward too. So, quite the movie. Maybe not my favorite, but I think there's a lot to appreciate there. And if you get a chance, if it's by you and you got some time, I think you check it out. If not, it'll definitely be on probably like Amazon Prime or something like that in the next couple months. So, those art films are coming out finally. What will we be talking about next week, Dave?
Yeah, next week we have two notable movies. One is Men in Black International with Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. We'll see how that turns out. We do like those people. Late Night, Emma Thompson, Mindy Kaling penned movie from Amazon, also out of Sundance. That's finally getting a actually wide release, so that's interesting. It actually had a really strong limited release this past weekend, which is atypical for Amazon. So that's actually good that they're getting a return on their investment in the movie business for once. Goldlink is dropping an album, first in 2 years. Very excited for that. He's a very, very fun rapper. And Bastille is dropping an album. I know you're super excited about that. We probably won't talk about it though. And Easy Season 3 came out about a month ago on Netflix. Yeah. We're finally going to talk about it. A show we've talked about the first two seasons that we both quite enjoyed. So definitely wanted to give that a look. And Euphoria with Zendaya on HBO premieres on Sunday. So we'll talk about that at some point.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do like a couple episode catch up or like a mid-season review with that one, depending on what the buzz is with it. Before we wrap up, again, if you're listening, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Follow us all the ways you want there. And also go to Twitter @nostalgiapod to keep up with all the movie news, movie, TV, and music news we don't talk about on here. We love you. We appreciate you. Peace out.